A very good afternoon. This is Dr. K. Bhavani Shankar, and I will be dealing with rural and urban sociology for third year, semester 5. Today, we'll be discussing about the introduction of rural sociology. Rural sociology is a branch of sociology which is going to study about rural society. That means it tries to study about social organization as well as social processes that are characteristics of geographical locations where population size is relatively smaller and the density is very, very low, my dear friends. So there must be a question from your side. What is the need for us to study this rural sociology or rural society? If we see, 75%, approximately 3 by 4th of the Indian population, even now resides in the rural areas. And by 2050, it is projected that 50% of the rural population will be in India, and the 50% of the population will be there in the urban societies. Because of liberalization, globalization, and industrialization, we have seen the societies have been tremendously being transformed. So most of the rural areas are being converted or being prospered into towns, from towns to cities like. So in this transition period, our duty is to study what is the structure of these societies and how these structures are being changed and how the functions are being changed and what kind of new issues are coming in front of us. So there is a need for us to study this, both the rural societies as well as urban societies. According to A.R. Desai, the prime objective of rural sociology should be to make a scientific, systematic, and comprehensive study of the rural social organizations. That means we need to study the structure, the function, and objective tendencies of development on the basis of a systematic scientific study. In your first semester, you must have studied that sociology will try to study the society from a systematic as well as a holistic way, my dear friends. So he has said that our duty is to study this. So why we are going to study? So that we can study, we can discover the laws of the development of these communities or societies. Now let us discuss about the importance of rural sociology. The first one is our duty is to systematize and make a scientific analysis of villages as well as rural communities. So we go to the people and we try to gather the information from the people and we try to explain each and every information in a systematic and scientific way, my dear friends. The second one is because most of the population are residing in the rural areas, our duty is to study all those problems of which are there in the rural communities, and we also try to study the life of rural people in the process of this transition. For example, if we see in the rural areas, most of the people are not getting sufficient employment. Unemployment is there. At the same time, poverty is it's to the peak. And we also see that there are plenty of other issues which are residing in the rural areas. So our duty is to study what are the causes for these problems and what are the consequences of these problems. Our duty is to study them and explain them. Recently, you must have watched a movie, Balagam. I'm not promoting the movie, but most of you must have watched that movie. In that, you must have seen a person try to start snookers and then the other games which are not acceptable in that area. They want to transform their society. They want to upgrade their skills. They want to also enhance or improve their social economical condition. But there is no acceptance for that gain. And you must have seen that the person must have been bankrupted. So here, our duty is to study all those problems which are there in the rural areas. And our duty, once you have an understanding, you will be able or we will be able to address those issues. The third one is the rural society is the basic or fundamental basis of human civilizations and cultures. our duty is to understand how this civilization has been brought and how our culture has been developed from time to time, and how this culture is undergoing tremendous changes can also be understood once you know the origin of our culture as well as the civilization. So rural sociology will try to facilitate to understand the evolution of all human civilizations which are there on this planet. So, if you're going to study rural society, it helps us to understand various rural problems. As India is the land of villages, therefore, rural societies is comparatively more important in comparison with other countries of the world. Then the next one is it helps us to understand the social life of the people. For example, for example, if we see the structure in the villages, we find the caste system. Even now, in some of the villages, it is very, very dominant, my dear friends, in terms of interactive process, in terms of social processes. For example, let us see the caste in terms of occupational aspects. A potter makes the pots, a carpenter turns the wood into different objects which we require, like chairs, bed, and so on. In all our houses, we must have the wooden furniture, and we have purchased it long back, and it may sustain for 20, 30 plus years also. Once you have purchased this, that means the carpenter is not going to find livelihood for 20 years. That means what he or she has to do. In the traditional caste system, they said that a person who is born in a particular caste, he cannot shift from one occupation. That means from traditional occupation to that of the other occupations. He cannot shift from that occupation, isn't it? So what about him? That means he has to simply die. So in our rural structure, they said that at the time of Sankranti, one day before Sankranti, we have this Bogi Mantalu. On that day, anybody can forcibly go into anybody's house, and if there is any old furniture, they can take that furniture and they can put it on fire. And people have made a system saying that on the day, if any person is going to get more scolded, that means he is being blessed more. So, how to see it from? How come they are going to get blessings? How come they are going to get blessings? So, we have to see it from a philosophical perspective. That means the person is going to get some livelihood. That means he or she is not going to commit any crime in the society. Remember that. If there is no job for the person, that means there is no money. There is no money means there is no food. And no human being on this planet wish to die out of hunger. So there are chances that people may have deviant behavior and they may do theft, robbery, or in this process, they may also create issues for the other people. Isn't it? So you're going to put on the food on fire, the furniture on fire. That means the carpenter is going to get some work so that he can satisfy his requirements. So our duty is to understand. Our duty is to understand about various issues which are there in the society and how these societies have been structured. So next one is agriculture is the main livelihood of the country. So our duty is to have a deeper understanding on rural conditions which also support for agricultural development. Let me give one example. Last 10 years back, almost a decade back, there was a study going on done, or else the study was conducted by the agriculture department, that too in Adilabad, and that too on apple plantation, whether Adilabad is suitable for apple cultivation or not. And they came to know that the during the winters the climate is very, very cold. Sometimes it may also touch very, very close to zero, my dear friends. So they thought that okay, this climate is suitable for this. And do you know what they have done? They have gone for experimentation. And in the near future, my dear friends, there is no need for us to import apples from Jammu and Kashmir, neither from the other countries. We will also have apples from Adilabad. So our duty is to study all the climatic conditions or all the factors which are going to contribute for the development of agriculture, my dear friends. As according to 2011 census, 57% of the total population even now depend on agriculture, plus 10% indirectly depend on agriculture sector, my dear friends. That's the reason there is a greater need on the sociologists to study how can we improve or develop the agriculture sector. So sociology can also help us in understanding all the aspects like what type of soil is there, whether we have irrigational facilities or not, whether underground water is available or not, what kind of belief system the people have, because it also influences the agriculture production and consumption parts. The next one is we also have this Panchayat Raj institutions. Actually, if we see in the Western countries, we have this Senate system. And even whenever we are going to have discussions on some crucial topics in the Supreme Court or High Court, we are going to have a bench. That means we're not going to have a single judge. We are going to have multiple judges, and based on their consensus, they are going to give the verdict. The same way in the traditional Indian society, in the panchayat system, we used to have sarpanch. Actually, the word has been derived from a Hindi word like sar means head and panch means five. Sarpanch. That means five elder people pertaining to the caste used to sit together and they used to listen to both the versions, and based on consensus, they used to give the verdict, my dear friends. They used to give the verdict. So even now in the villages, my dear friends, we find these Panchayat Raj institutions, which are the reflections of democratic decentralization. This helps us in understanding the governance at the grassroots level. Okay, then the next one is we see that in the year 1991, under the leadership of P.V. Narasimha Rao, we have gone for economic reforms at a massive level. We have gone for liberalization, globalization, and privatization. And we also see that from these eras, like there is a lot of urbanization, industrialization, and also modernization taking place. And there's a greater influence on the village communities. So we can try to understand and analyze the influence of this on the rural communities and what kind of changes are taking place in the societies can be studied. And the last importance is that the rural sociologists have attached supreme importance to the study of agrarian relations and crisis. If we see in the rural areas, most of the farmers are committing suicides. We try to understand why farmers are committing suicide, what are the causes for that, and what must be the role of the government to also address these issues. We can provide the inputs to the government so that the government can design the policies, my dear friends. At the same time, we also have land reforms. Then we also have peasant movements, and we also have rural stratification system, rural leadership, and so on. So we sociologists, we can also study about all the agrarian relations which exist in the rural society. This about the importance of rural sociology. Now let us discuss about the nature of rural sociology. Is rural sociology a science? Is sociology a science? Yes, my dear friends, in your first semester, you must have studied that. Sociology is a science because it undergoes three processes. The first one is experimentation, then verification. The third one is validity and reliability. The duty of the sociologist is to study the structure and the functioning of society, and our duty is to make generalizations, my dear friends. At the same time, if the theories are not up to mark, what we do, we simply reject them and we are going to propose new theories in place of the earlier one, which does not seem to be fit to the societies. Now, let us discuss about the nature of rural sociology. First one, it is a science. It tries to develop a body of organized, verified knowledge, which is based on scientific investigation. The second one is it is science because we are going to employ the scientific methods. Uh, we will not be able to do the experiments in the laboratory just like the natural sciences, but we can go into the society. The whole society is a laboratory for us, my dear friends. So we go into the society, and by using the tools and techniques like observation, interview schedule, questioning method, and so on, we will be able to gather the information from the people, and we try to quantify and also measure the data so that we can make generalizations. So just like in natural sciences, the methods which are used, the same way in social sciences also, we use the same tools to gather the information. The third one is it tries to detect general laws from a systematic study or from the material which is available. And the next one is based on this, we try to attempt to make some laws, or based on these laws, we can also predict, we can make what may happen in the near future. And the last one is sociology. Rural sociology will also try to trace the cause and effect relation between different variables, my dear friends. For example, you can see that there is a lot of pollution in Delhi. What is the cause for that? If we see the neighboring states, once they have the fodder, once they have the paddy like, then the rice is left, the grass is left over. And do you know the farmers are going to simply put on the fire to the grass, and the smoke from that state is being moved to Delhi, making Delhi one of the most polluted place in the country, my dear friends, even on the planet. Most polluted place. The air pollution is too high in Delhi. So why it is happening? Because there is excessive use of technology. The animal wealth is coming down, and whatever the grass is there after separating the paddy, there is no use for that. So the farmers are simply putting on the fire, which is going to have the effect in Delhi. So we are going to study the cause and effect relation between various variables. Now there must be a question from your side, sir, whether rural sociology is a perfect science. Now we said it is a science, but is it a perfect science? My dear friends, no. Because the human behavior and the human societies are conditioned by n number of factors. It is not the same. The conditions which are there in Hyderabad and the conditions which are there in the desert area are not the same. Their living conditions and the living conditions which are there in Hyderabad is not the same. So obviously, there will also be changes in the living patterns, the belief system, the food which they have, the dress patterns, everything. It goes on changing, my dear friends. So complete generalization in terms of this rural sociology is not possible because of these changes, my dear friends. The second one is there is a problem about factual study. Since the information or data collected from the people may have its own limitations also. And the third one is there is also lack of objective approach because it is difficult for the researcher or for the sociologist to weigh the sentiments, emotions, as well as sociologist himself or herself being a human being, they may also be influenced by the people's sentiments. And the last one is the social fluctuations may also make it difficult in making a precise prediction. That's the reason we say that sociology is a science, but it's not a perfect science, my dear friends. Now, let us see what is the scope of this rural sociology. Rural sociology is concerned with the characteristics, features, nature, and human ecology of village communities. It tries to study the patterns of human behavior and activities of rural people. Observation of such patterns unravels the institutional structures of rural communities such as caste, class, dominant caste, Jajmani system, backward classes, rural politics, and so on. So we are going to study the characteristics, features, and human ecology of the village community. The next one is rural sociology will try to study the structure, the functions of the rural social institutions such as family, marriage, kinship, and religion. Because even if we see in terms of this marriage and family, it is not the same across the country and across the globe, my dear friends. It goes on varying from one community to the other community. So we try to study the structure and functioning of various social institutions. Then we also try to study about the religion as well as culture, as these are indispensable parts of rural society. Religion acts as an agency of informal means of social control. This is going to have multiple set of rules and regulations which is going to govern the human behavior and human activities, my dear friends. So we try to study the complexity of this religion, also the rural culture and the cultural patterns which are available in that particular place. The rural sociology will also try to study about socio-economical condition of the people, political as well as cultural problems which are there in the rural societies. So whatever the agrarian crisis is there, we try to study those crises. We have certain issues like farmer suicides, poverty, illiteracy, religious superstitious beliefs, traditionalism, inadequate housing, as well as rural unemployment. We try to focus on these areas so that we can also address these issues. At the same, we also try to study about the social processes that pattern individuals' social behavior. The social process can be classified into two types. One is associative social process and the other one is disassociative social processes. In our first semester, you must have studied about social processes in detail. That there are three types of associative social processes. One is cooperation. Second one is second one is accommodation, and the third one is assimilation. Whereas there are two types of disassociative social process. One is competition and the other one is conflict. So we also try to focus on this associative as well as disassociative social processes which are going to govern the human interactions or human processes, my dear friends. Then we also try to study about various forms of social control in the rural communities like norms, rules and regulations, laws, and structures of society which regulate the human behavior. There are two types of agencies which can control the human behavior. One is in the formal way, and the other one is through informal way. When we talk about informal way, my dear friends, we have customs, traditions, folkways, mores, norms, religion, and so on. And in the rural societies, if any person is going to violate the norms, values, everything, my dear friends, there is a fear of social isolation or boycotting the people from the society. And when we talk about formal agencies, then we have the police and the judicial system, which are going to influence the human beings' actions. Then we also try to study about the changes which are taking place in the society or changes taking place in various institutions. For example, because of the modern English education, we can see that there's a plenty of change in the human society. People are migrating from one place to the other place in search of a decent living in terms of employment opportunities and so on, my dear friends. And because of education, my dear friends, you can also see that because people want to migrate from one place to the other place, you can also see that the transport system has been developed, the communication system has been developed, and we can also see that the outlook of the people has also been changed, my dear friends. So the society are being transformed. So we also try to study about the changes which are taking place. The next one, we try to have an understanding of empirical realities of rural communities. So when you're going to have the understanding of the realities, then you can help the policy makers in designing the policies which can contribute for the development of the rural society or else address the issues which are there. For example, you must have heard about Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act or scheme. What is the need for the government to introduce this scheme? There are two reasons for introducing Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee or Guarantee Act or scheme. And this says that it is going to provide minimum 100 days employment for the people. It talked about minimum 100 days. What is the need? Because agriculture sector can provide employment hardly for 8.5 months to 9 months. The rest of the 3 months, there will be no agriculture activity. So what about agro labor? That means no work for them, no money for them. So obviously there will be malnutrition or undernutrition and the whole family is going to suffer. The whole family may suffer. So some of the young people like you and me may shift or migrate from that rural area to the nearby towns or urban areas in search of job, only for a temporary period maybe. When these people go, they may have a decent income to stay in a, I'm not saying a rich locality, but at least a moderate locality where they can stay. But because these people have migrated to the urban societies just because of livelihood and just because in order to escape from poverty, they may reside in the slum areas, my dear friends. And you know that the slum areas, the facilities are not good enough at all. And there are chances that if these people find a job, well and fine. And if there is no job for them, then obviously there are chances that these people may have deviant behavior. Second one is they are going to build up the pressure on the urban areas because the urban centers have to provide employment for all the migrated people also. Second one is that some of the older people who does not possess any skill at all, they may not migrate, no migration, no money at all. So obviously poverty will increase and they may also suffer. So in order to keep the check for both these problems, to control migration, at the same time also provide employment opportunities for the people so that they can make a living, the government has introduced this policy, my dear friends. Okay, so our duty is, if you're going to have an empirical reality, if you're going to have understanding on empirical reality, then at the time we will be able to make the plans for the society or for the people for their developmental activities. Rural sociology addresses itself to the planning and development processes in rural communities through local self-government. So we are going to have the local government, self-governments. At the same time, we also have voluntary organizations which are working in those communities or areas. So with the help of this government as well as non-governmental organizations, we can make some policies for these people, my dear friends. At last, we will also try to not only design the policies, help in designing the policies, we also help them in evaluating the policies to see to what extent these policies are going to be useful in transforming the society. We also does that and we also can help in implementation process. So this about the scope of rural sociology. Now let us go for urban sociology. Urban sociology primarily deals with the impact of city life on social actions and social relationship, social institutions, and types of civilizations derived from and based on urban modes of living. Urban sociology focuses on the study of social life and patterns of human interaction in towns, cities, and metropolis. It studies the structures, processes, and changes as well as the problems of the urban areas and tries to provide the inputs for planning and policy making. So now what is the importance and what is the need for us to study this urban sociology? The urban population of India in the year 2018 is 32.5% of the total population. That means nearly one third of the Indian population are residing in the urban areas. And by 2050, it is projected that 50% of the total population resides in the urban areas. The urban areas are fastly growing, my dear friends. The process of industrialization and globalization has brought the cities into the forefront of human civilization. And even the government of India is planning to develop the smart cities, my dear friends. So here, our duty is to study about these urban centers because most of the people think that urban centers, there is a lot of development in overall spheres, but at the same time, we also have the negative shade that we have a number of problems in the urban centers too, my dear friends. Our duty is to study all these things. Now, let us see about the nature of urban sociology. Urban sociology will try to study the images and representation of the city. It tries to study the civic culture. It tries to study the mixed narratives and collective memories, sentiments, and so on, my dear friends. It also tries to study the lifestyle of the people, the interaction places, as well as the practices which are there in the society. Flanagan has said that we need to have a structuralist approach to investigate the interplay between the political and economical forces, the growth, the decline, and changing spatial organizations of urban spaces. So, urban sociology will try to study both the physical aspects as well as the psychological aspects as well as the both the space as well as the people, my dear friends, in terms of this. Now, what is the scope of this urban sociology? Urban sociology will try to study the physical space. Okay. At the same time, it tries to study the division of spaces in the city. If we see in the rural societies, my dear friends, we are going to have the segmental division of society, like where the dominant caste people stay, where the poor people stay, where the Dalits reside in the villages. Like we are going to have a segmental division. The same way in the urban centers also, we are going to have a division of this. Like if we see all the people pertaining to the film industry, they stay in Film Nagar or Yusuf Gouda, and all the people who are working in the software industry, they stay nearby high-tech city and so on. Like we are also going to have this spatial segregation. We also try to study the division of spaces in the city, my dear friends, in terms of residential patterns and so on. And then we also try to study about the mode of living of the people who are there in the urban centers. We also try to study about various social institutions and how they are going to function in the society will also be studied by the urban sociologists, my dear friends. In terms of political science or political sociology, we try to study the political behavior of the individuals in terms of power, in terms of decision making, economics, and so on. When we talk about economics, okay, we try to study about the public policy, taxation, public expenditure, and so on. So we try to study the social institutions which are there in the urban societies and how they are functioning. At the same time, we also try to study about the changes which are taking place in the urban centers. what are the causes for that, and what kind of effect it is going to have on the society will be studied. At the same time, we also study about various issues which are there in the urban centers, like uh, urban poverty, unemployment. Then we also have problems like prostitution, beggary, and so on. So we'll also be trying to study about all these social problems which are there in the urban societies, my dear friends. So once you're going to have an understanding on the urban societies, then just like in the rural society, we said that we can also contribute for social policies in making the plans. The same way, we can also help the government in designing the policies for turning the urban centers into a safe place where each and every person gets a chance for making a living and also develop the communities, my dear friends. Right now, in order to reduce the pollution in Delhi, the Delhi government has come up with odd even numbers. Like means the total of the vehicle number, if it is odd, that will be on the road one day, and the even numbers will be on the other day. And the government is also encouraging the people to go for electric vehicles so that the pollution can also come down, my dear friends. So based on the inputs given by the urban sociologists, my dear friends, the government may also take the inputs and also design the policies for the betterment of the urban communities. According to Sorokin and Zimmerman, they try to differentiate between the urban and rural sociology on the basis of 8 indicators. The first one is occupation. In the rural areas, majority of the people even now depend on agriculture sector. Whereas coming to the urban centers, most of the people are employed in the secondary and tertiary sector. If we see in terms of employment, we can categorize them into three types: primary, secondary, and tertiary sector. The primary sector is nothing but agriculture. Secondary sector is nothing but industries. And tertiary sector is nothing but service sector like banking and telecommunication and so on, my dear friends. So in the rural areas, majority of the people depend on primary sector, that is nothing but agriculture. Whereas coming to the industrial societies or to the urban centers, my dear friends, majority of the people are employed in the secondary and tertiary sector. Okay. And if we see in terms of size of community, my dear friends, if we see in the rural areas, the population will be around 3,000 to 5,000, not beyond that. Whereas coming to the cities, my dear friends, the population is huge beyond that. Then in terms of density of population, the density of population is very, very low in the rural areas, whereas it is nearly 736 in the urban, 736 for every square kilometer in the urban centers. Then if we see in the rural societies, we find homogeneity, my dear friends. The life of the individual is more or less the same. Their belief system, their practices are more or less the same. Whereas coming to the urban centers, we find heterogeneity. The life of the people are different, multiple occupations, lot of division of labor, and even people are doing the same job, even their ambitions and aspirations may be entirely different, my dear friends. So we find homogeneity in the rural areas and heterogeneity in the urban areas. And we have stratification based on caste system in the rural areas. So people are, Brahmins are kept on the top, followed by Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras are kept at the bottom, my dear friends. Whereas coming to the urban centers, even though caste is there, but it's very, very negligible, or its prominence is going down, my dear friends. Here in the urban centers, people are classified based on the class system, that is based on the economical condition of the people, like upper, middle, and lower classes, my dear friends. So we find differentiation and stratification there based on caste system, whereas in the urban areas, it is based on class system. If you see in the rural areas, We also have social mobility. What do you mean by mobility? Mobility means moving from one place to the other place. We call it as mobility. Then what is this social mobility? Moving from one social status to the other social status, we call it as social mobility. If you see in the rural areas, the mobility is very, very less. And social mobility is almost impossible, my dear friends, moving from one status to the other status, because the caste system is already fixed and there is no chance that people can change the caste status. People may change the religion. People may change the religion, but there is no option of changing the caste system, my dear friends, or the caste status, my dear friends. So the mobility is more or less the fixed, my dear friends, are very, very negligible in the rural areas. Whereas coming to the urban centers, my dear friends, it provides multiple opportunities. The mobility is higher in the urban centers. And in terms of the social interaction, in the rural areas, even the social interaction is conditioned by the caste system, by the status provided for the individual based on the caste system, my dear friends. Whereas in the urban areas, the interaction is based on the purpose, based on the requirements of the people. Here, the caste is not going to play a role. It's only the necessities or the requirements which is going to make the people interact with the individuals. Okay. So, and the last one is the environment which is there. So, based on these 8 factors, they try to make a difference between the rural and urban sociology, my dear friends. Now, let us discuss the scope of urban sociology in specific or in, through significant aspects. The first one is we try to study the emergence of urban communities and how these are being developing or spreading light. If you see, once upon a time, Hyderabad was only limited to Uppal. Uppal was treated as city outskirts, but right now it has gone beyond that. You can see most of the villages which are there has come under the purview of Hyderabad. Now the city has spread not 20 kilometers, it has gone beyond 40 kilometers to 60 kilometers radius, my dear friends. The city is spreading like anything. So we try to study how these urban communities have been emerged and how they are going to spread. All these things will be studied. The second one is we also try to study the development of towns, social disorganization, the problems of urban life, and town planning, my dear friends. We try to study the towns. Okay, these towns are going to be helping in getting whatever the raw material we require for the urban areas, my dear friends. In this, we try to study about how societies are organized and how they are being disorganized, everything. The next one, we also try to study the interaction between urban environment and the development of human personality. The human personality. Because of urban environment, we see that both the girls and boys are being educated. Both of them are being given equal opportunities, equal space for them to get educated, to do a job. And just because of this, you can also see that there's plenty of change in the family structure, in terms of economical structure, and so on, my dear friends. We try to study how these are going to develop the personality of the individuals. If we see in terms of marriage patterns, once upon a time, a person who got married, they used to believe that it is a second bond, and this bond will exist for 7 births and deaths. Even they are going to be wife and husband, not only in this birth, but they are going to be even in the death also. But in the urban societies, we have seen that if people do not wish to continue their relation, they are simply taking divorce and they are going for the next marriage. They're not spoiling their life, or else they are not taking that relation very, very serious, my dear friends. The next one is we also try to study about the urban culture and the ethics which are there in the society. We see the reflections of various social institutions like family, marriage, kinship, education, economy, religion, as well as in polity. We try to study about how these institutions are functioning, what is the structure of these institutions, and how they are changing, and what kind of effect it has on the society can also be studied, my dear friends. If we see in the modern societies, we see that the joint families are simply fading away and turning into nuclear families. And even the nuclear families are going the newer trend, like if both the wife and husband are working, they are staying at different places and only during weekends or else at the once in a month they come together, they are staying together. So even in terms of nuclear families, a new trend is coming up in order to make a living, my dear friends. So we try to study. So once both the parents are staying at different places, what kind of impact it has on the child, whether the child will have all the things which he requires to develop their personality. We will also study about all these aspects, my dear friends. Then we also try to study the changes in the institutions from the urban context, not from the general context, like, but we are going to study it only from the urban point of view. Then we also try to study about the class structure and the class structures, struggles which are there in the urban context. Because we see that in the modern societies or in the urban societies, we are going to stratify the people based on the economical condition, like upper, middle, and poor. And the people who are doing business, their main intention is to make profit, and there are chances that they may make the people work for longer period and they may pay them very, very less. So there may be urban exploitation or exploitation at the workplace, my dear friends. So there may be also conflicts among different class structures, my dear friends, in the urban societies. So we also try to study about these urban issues. Then we also try to study about the problems of social diseases like uh, pollution, slums, gambling, bars and clubs, and so on. There are plenty of other issues too, my dear friends. And as a sociologist, we need to concentrate or focus on the social issues which are there so that we can have an understanding. And based on that, you can give the inputs to the government in designing the policies, my dear friends. And next one is we also try to study the factors and causes for social and personal disorganization. Even if you see that there are people who are having deviant behavior, families, individual disorganization is there. If a person is disorganized, then obviously he will have an disorganization within the family. And if family is disorganized, the society at large will also be disorganized. So we try to study why a person is disorganized, what are the causes for that, and we also try to help them in coming out of these issues or problems, my dear friends. And at last, we also try to focus on industries and industrial relations, the causes for disharmony. We try to study the problems or the relation between the labor and the management, and so on, my dear friends, so that we can create harmony and peaceful relations among the individuals who are there in different arenas in the urban society. And last, my dear friends, we try to study about various social issues or tensions which are there in the society. Like we have communalism, we have some other issues. Like we also try to study on these issues, my dear friends. So till here, we try to study, have an understanding on rural sociology as well as urban sociology, my dear friends. Rural sociology will try to have an understanding on rural communities. They try to study in a holistic way by using scientific tools and methods. The same way, urban sociology will try to study the urban society in a systematic way. It tries to study the society in a systematic way to have a better understanding on the structure, functioning of urban societies so that we can formulate the theories, give inputs to the government so that they can design the policies and make the places a better place for living, my dear friends. So we'll stop here, beta, and we'll continue in the next class. Have a nice day.